Pandemonium Reigns.
Hello, friends and family. Welcome to Pandemonium Reigns. I'm Dan. He's Mike. I'm pretty. He's sexy. It's been a minute since we've been with you guys, and even been with you guys together.
That's what hurts the most.
Reigns.
Rascal Flats have entered the chat. We're excited to be with you guys. Before we jump into things, we'll make sure that you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button, you hit So, true story. It really helps us a lot, especially on places like YouTube, where you do hit the like button. It does great things for the algorithm. It does terrible things for the algorithm when you don't listen to the entire episode. At least just turn us on. If you don't listen to us anymore, turn the volume down. Give us the credit that we deserve here. We're doing this for free, y'all.
Thank you.
Hey, today we're going to begin a new series. I feel like I'm entering youth pastor mode right here with a sermon series. We're going to begin a new series on Pandemonium Reigns podcast. We're going to look at the first-year head coaches. We're going to give our best case, worst case scenario for each one of these teams, and we're going to start today with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Mike, when you hear the when you hear the noun Nebraska Cornhuskers, what are the first words that come to your mind?
First words, the first feeling that I get is a little blue. It's a little sad. They're not in a state, and they haven't been in a state that I like for them. They've been in a state similar to and worse than even our Tennessee Vols. And, think about all the times that these programs were on a different trajectory, on a dominant trajectory together. Mm-hmm. And it makes me sad for, my gosh, yet again, the programs are linked in fan bases. Look at the loyalty of the fan base in Nebraska, man. I mean, mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful fan base. I want them to have the success that we've felt ourselves inching into. Mm-hmm. Like Matt Rule, wish it could work out for their sake that he went to the NFL, but wish you'd have never taken that route. But we're about to tell you all of our feelings and opinions about the Cornhuskers, and hope there's a return to prominence in there somewhere for them.
Yeah. I feel the same. I like Nebraska. Growing up as a 90s kid, maybe didn't see them on TV all the time, but they were sure as heck in the conversation. I remember being in elementary school at the cafeteria, the lunch table, having, that week's newspaper and reading and looking at, last week's games upcoming, always seeing them in the AP Top 25. Arguably, we could have been national champions in 97 had we not ran into the monster that was Nebraska. Did an absolute number on Peyton and company. But anyway, that is a long time ago.
Wow, yes, it is.
A lot has changed in the world of the Cornhuskers, including coaches, including conferences. I did discover, I don't know if there's any truth to this, but it sounds like, we've praised their fan base a lot. They've sold on every game since JFK, right? It sounds like their boosters have bought these tickets.
Oh, yeah. There's been some, if you want to call it, they've fudged the numbers a little bit. They've cooked the books a little bit. Who can blame them? I mean, think about just the loyalty. If Tennessee had the loyalty from boosters like that, where they weren't strong-arming coaching searches and things like that, think about where Tennessee could have been sooner. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a little fudging going on there, a little book cooking, but still admirable. I mean, just the turnout that they still have. If the tickets are purchased, but the seats are empty. Yeah. I mean, they haven't put out a product that deserves that type of loyalty, which I admire.
Exactly. We're going to shift this to Matt Rule, who is now the head coach of Nebraska, and I love this hire. I love this hire. He has quite a resume of rebuilding, most notably Temple and Baylor, the dumpster fire that was Baylor.
Yes.
The world of mess. You can probably allude more to that in the coming content if you want to. But just, as I started digging into this, just some things I wanted to throw out there before we dive into the conversation. And Nebraska just finished their 6th straight losing season. This is what I meant when I say that they've come a long way since the 90s. They are 56-35 since leaving the Big 12. Frazier, all these. I could go. I'm not even going to. Okay, I'm going to stop right there with Frazier. All these names out of the 90s, right? These guys are just rolling over in their beds at night. Like, oh, the agony. Such a long ways away. 2016 was their last winning season, going 9-4, running into Butch Jones in a bowl game, losing that game.
Yeah.
But some real quick things on Matt Rule as we get into this. Didn't do well in his first seasons at Temple at Baylor. Went 2-10 at Temple. Went 1-11 at Baylor. In just a few words, what do you think Nebraska fans can expect without getting into the scenarios here? What do you think they can expect year one?
Man, and this is like a little summary, summarization of what I've got here for the series that we're doing, but I think they have to hitch their belts, their wagons to progress. I mean, whether it's increasing the speed of the team in, unfortunately, a lot of areas, but even if it's one area or two that you can really kind of just, hey, we left a lot of wins out there that we wish we'd had in 2023, but boy, did we do X, Y, or Z really well. You know what I mean? I had this misconception for Matt Rule for a long time because of the nature of his rebuilds, because of his meteoric rise in coaching there for a while, that he was this just crazy offensive guy. He's done that at times. He's worked and that's the thing. He's a chameleon. He has worked in so many roles, so many position groups that he's worked with. But I really hope that translates to at least progress. Some area needs to break through in 2023 to give hope to recruits, to give hope to fans, to continue that loyalty, and to show that there is going to be something built out of, again, a really, really big rebuild. What would be his probably most impressive rebuild because of the name Nebraska, because of the legacy there. That's what I hope they see soon is progress. So he'll kind of be a miracle worker if he does it soon. Yeah, but really, really hopeful for them, because I agree it's a really nice hire, going out and getting someone that many teams want in the shape that you've been, and even having you thought you nailed the last coaching hiring, Scott Frost. Yeah. For sure. I want to talk recruiting and transfer portal stuff real quick before we get into their schedule and then their scenarios. They did pretty dang well in the portal, considering, where you've been coming off, 4-8 seasons, 24th ranked recruiting class, transfer portal class. And just some notable names, obviously, being the most prominent, Eric Gilbert and quarterback Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech. They got an offensive tackle from Georgia, got an edge rusher from Georgia, a receiver from Virginia. These seem to be the guys that they are excited about. I want to point out recruiting, and then let's get into schedule. 24th, according to 247, ranked recruiting class, highlighted by 9 defensive linemen. Wow.
5 of those guys being edge rushers. I think Matt Rule is saying this game revolves around the quarterback. We're going to make sure the other guy can't stand, right?
Yeah.
4 offensive linemen, 5 defensive backs. Their schedule, as we get into this, now that we know, a little bit, there's going to be arguably a quarterback battle. You're going to have a target in Eric Gilbert, hopefully. The schedule, I don't know that I'd call this thing favorable.
No. This is going to be one of those, like, to bring it back to our terms for a minute, this is like a Tennessee schedule where you're facing the gauntlet and you're facing an up-and-coming, a buzz, just loaded with buzz, loaded with fanfare, Colorado, Dion. You're going there. Don't even have a home game until week 3. You don't start out easy. So, yeah, less than favorable for sure, among the hardest in the nation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So here's how we're going to start this conversation. Let's walk through the schedule game by game. Let's spend a ton of time on each game, but just maybe highlight some things. And so we'll give our prediction. We'll give our ceiling, what they think they're actually capable of, what the floor is, what the bottom is, and let's talk best case, worst case scenario, and we'll get into that. Or I'll explain more as we get into that when it comes time. They're gonna begin the season 2 games on the road. First game at Minnesota. What you got happening here?
That's not an easy start because they are consistent. They're fairly stable under PJ Fleck. I don't see a scenario. I've got this game as a loss, whether I'm looking at it, from what is the best case, or if I'm looking at it from the dire straits, just what are we doing here? I don't see a path to victory that in that game, unless it's just one of those really, really down Minnesota teams reloading. I know they lose pieces every year, but I've got this one as a loss just due to the consistency and stability at Minnesota.
I think consistency and stability at Minnesota is a great way to describe that. And you throw that in with the fact that it's just too early. You're talking about game 1 under the rule era. You don't even have time to get your feet up underneath you. I've got this as a loss as well. Again, we're going to be talking about the worst case scenario, and this is not my worst case scenario, but a bad thing that could happen going from summer into game 1 is that you don't have your quarterback. You don't know who that is, and if they're doing that at this point, it screams loss.
Yes,
I don't think that kind of thing is going to happen underneath a guy like Matt Rule, but needless to say, a lot of stability versus establishment or establishing. I'm going to put that in the loss in the Nebraska category.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to turn around. They're going to go from traveling east to traveling southwest, to Colorado to face Deion Sanders. What you got?
Yeah, I do think there's this game is one of the more toss-uppy games on the schedule. The only issue is whereas your roster is probably in a fairly similar place, all things considered, until you consider the Deion factor and him bringing the very best pieces from his last stop to where he is now. Now, Nebraska they got in the portal, like you mentioned. What it comes down to for me is the Sanders, Deion, and Shadur versus all of the new and hosting this game for Colorado.
Yeah.
It again makes it feel like an uphill battle for Nebraska because, like you mentioned, the quarterback, unknownness of the situation for Nebraska. But again, I think there's a path to victory here because if I'm going to pick just a surgical coach, if I'm going to take the more established coach in the situation, I'm going to take Rule. But who can work with the most? Who can do what with the best with what they have? Mm-hmm. I'm afraid that it's Deion. I would like to see Nebraska win this game. And again, it is one of the more toss-uppy games because of where Colorado's been. So I'm feeling that it could be a loss because of the quarterback position. Hopefully they'll change my mind there in week 1.
I don't know if this is Deion Sanders' first home game in Colorado. Is it?
That's a good question.
Their first game is TCU, is it not?
I'm feeling like they go to TCU.
Okay, well, let's just say this: if you're looking that up real quick, if this is Deion's first home game in Boulder, the mojo will be enough to catch a win here. I think.
Yeah,
I know this is year 1 for Deion as well, but I think they're going to have a little bit more stability. Shadur is already familiar with his head coach, right?
Yeah,
and there's potential that they're going to be looking at the same offensive and defensive schemes. You've got Cavassier Smoke, who we're familiar with being in the backfield. You got 5-star corner receiver Travis Hunter. There's some names there that just I think this game is winnable for Nebraska. Now, I don't think it's likely winnable. I don't think it's highly winnable. I think it's winnable, but I got it as a loss.
Yeah. So Colorado does travel to TCU. So it's first home game for Deion. A lot of buzz going to be happening there unless they just lay just get smoked by TCU somehow. It's going to be very, very hostile, as hostile as they can be at Colorado.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best case scenarios for Nebraska in this game is that, the step up from the previous stop is too much for Shedeur Sanders, and that's what it would really have to be. The downside is that they really, really need some speed on their defense, and hopefully the talent transfusion plus the portal can be that for them.
Yeah. Agreed. Week 3, game 3, NIU.
I am going benefit of the doubt here. Benefit of the doubt, going with a dub, and hoping that I'm not going to look foolish for that.
Couldn't even tell you who the head coach is at NIU.
I can't either anymore.
Matt Rule gets his first win as a Nebraska Cornhusker head coach. Then they host La Tech. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Win number 2, sitting at 2-2.
Win, and for sure a must win.
Yeah, you can't lose these. You can't lose these at all.
Yeah.
This next one should be, in my mind, fairly quick as well. They're going to host Michigan. Loss.
They're going to catch some serious hands that day. It's a loss.
Corm run right, Corm run left, Edwards run right, Edwards run left, play action over the top, JJ McCarthy. Oh boy. And it could be one of those revenge tour type things for Michigan where they're just kind of, hell bent on making a run,
Yeah.
I don't know. Michigan, I think it's just going to be far too much at Champaign, Illinois, taking on the Fighting Brett Balimas.
There's just not a good feeling for me, not even in one aspect of that game, with what Illinois showed last year, with the pieces that they returned, just anything from it, what they did last year. I'm saying loss. I mean, especially being on the road, and this will be a very pivotal time of the year. They would have to have all systems just running without any issue to really compete in this game, because Belima will just drag the life out of you in a football game. So I'm saying loss.
Is Cody Brown back for them?
I don't believe he is. I don't believe so. Let the research team do some work here while you give your opinion on this.
Sure. Yeah. Illinois, it feels a lot like the Minnesota, at Illinois established versus trying to figure it out. Now, yes, Rule will be in 5-6 games by this point, but I just don't think that's enough. I like the fact that it's in Champaign. If I'm a Fighting Illini fan, I'd lean Illinois. I do have a word marked next to this game called steal. If there is a game that they can steal, I think it's this one.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to put it down as a loss. And while you're still looking it up, I'll go jump into the next one. They're going to host Northwestern. And if you were a football player for Nebraska last year, surely you are pissed off. Fitzgerald, I think his time in Northwestern might be coming to an end. Could take a year, could take 2, not sure. I think their trajectory is down. I'm going to take Nebraska in a win here.
Yeah, I'm going to take Nebraska in that one as well. I think things would really have to fall very bad and very much apart for Matt Rule in Nebraska to lose that game. And I agree with the trajectory of Fitzgerald is not good.
Yeah.
I'm going with a win here. I do have a game later in the schedule that I consider a still, as you alluded to, for Illinois, despite Brown being no longer in Champaign.
I bet you I could say one of 2 of who it might be. It's either going to be Maryland or Michigan State.
Ooh, that's one. You got 1 for 2 there. We'll get there.
Oh, okay. Well, it might be
maybe I've got more than one still here. That's probably the case.
Maybe it's this game that's next when they host Purdue.
That for me would not be a still, because
I was going to say
Purdue downgraded in one of the worst ways at the head coach position. I'm sure there were guys that left with Brom when he went back to Louisville. And this is the situation where we had the coaching swap, right? So they've got, my goodness.
Ryan Walters, the defense coordinator from Illinois.
Okay, never mind. I was thinking it was a true swap between Purdue and Louisville. That's good. So they did not downgrade quite as much as I thought. But I'm going to take Matt Rule in a situation like this, and whatever they're adapting as we're, past the halfway point of the season at this point, whatever they've figured out, I'm going to trust him to put it together when you host Purdue with a first-year coach. Purdue is losing their 14-year starting cornerback. My gosh. You know what I mean? They just had a super COVID senior, if you will, at quarterback for Purdue for so long now. And there's just going to be a lot to replace there. And I'm going to go Nebraska for this game.
Agreed. Took it right out of my mouth. That offense is gone. The ability to put up points is gone in Braum. Ryan Walters is more of a defensive guy who did really well at 37 years of age, which is weird because he's a year older than me, putting up a heck of a defense in Champaign, Illinois. But he's not going to get that figured out year one.
No.
This takes us to Nebraska traveling to East Lansing to take on the Spartans of Michigan State. What you got?
This is probably a loss. This is in like my minor still category. Like if things don't turn around for Mel Tucker in East Lansing, this is probably a very stillable game. Like if the offense still just is not clicking, it's not gelling. They haven't found a way to run the ball more effectively in the absence still of your boy, whose name escapes me at the moment for sure. But yes, this is stillable, but this is probably a loss. When you talk about, again, Mel Tucker starting to establish, they should have really just vengeance and cleaning up the 2022 season on their mind, not allowing a first-year coach in the mess that has been Nebraska to come into their house and steal a game. So I'm saying probable loss here.
Yeah, I'm going to write you down for a loss so I can put this out later. Yeah, I got loss as well. I don't think talent is the issue in East Lansing. I think coaching was. And I expect more out of Mel Tucker and his staff to not let history from 2022 repeat itself. I'm going to say Mel Tucker in a very tough Big Ten East division right that ship just a little bit. Not saying they beat Michigan, not saying they beat Ohio State, not saying they beat Penn State, but just fix a lot of errors.
Yeah.
They're then going to turn around, head home, and host Maryland.
So another still a bowl game here, probable loss, even though they're hosting Maryland. Man, it just talk about, again, a coach starting to build stability, starting to have some continuity there in Loxley. I just think it would be a tough thing to do to pull this game off, even at home, yada, yada, yada. I'm just feeling like this is probably a loss unless they have truly found lightning in a bottle in what would be week 10 here, their 10th game of the year, excuse me.
Yeah.
That's a hard ask. Is young Tagovailoa still there? Or is he finally out of eligibility?
One more year.
That's a loss. I'm sorry, it's a loss until I see otherwise.
Yeah, it sounds like the people of Maryland are about done with Mike Loxley, and I just wonder if this would be the case because I think he's done 6-6, 7-5. Like I don't think he's done anything better than that. But my gosh, the division that you're in.
Yeah, I mean,
aside from Rutgers and Indiana, hello. So
yeah,
that's tough. I've got Maryland as a loss as well. They're going to turn around. They're going to travel to Wisconsin and new head coach, Luke Fickell. What you got?
So this is a scenario when I talk about coaches that I like, where even though I like Matt Rule a lot and his ability to rebuild, I'm going to side with Luke Fickell a little bit more. Quarterback will be interesting there. They have been so 1700s in the way they played the football game at Wisconsin. So this is going to be interesting for them. If you want to call it a rebuild, it's as much as Wisconsin has seen of one in a long time. But again, man, just hosting Nebraska, what they've been this late in the season, I think Fickell will be on the way to figuring it out by then, figuring out who his playmakers are, what he's doing. I mean, surely to goodness, by this point of the season, it's probably a loss, again, unless they just find something magical at the quarterback position or some way that they can keep themselves in games despite their talent level where it's at right now.
Yeah. It reminds me of that head coach that was hired at Nebraska in the early 2000s who wanted to throw it around with what's going on with Luke Fickell in Wisconsin. And I don't know if Wisconsin fans are excited to put the ball in the air or what.
They should be, but yeah, good point.
But anyway, it's just going to be so strange. Nonetheless, going into the season, I like Wisconsin's roster better. I don't know what they've done in the portal. I don't know what they've done in recruiting. I think by game, what is this going to be, game 11, that Wisconsin's just going to be a little bit further along. But the ultimate difference is just that it's in Madison for me.
That's big. Absolutely.
I've got it as a loss. Nebraska's going to end the season hosting Iowa.
This is my still game.
This is your still. Okay.
This is my still game because Iowa might score 4 defensive touchdowns on you last year and not even have the ball cross the 50 offensively. That's what they might have done. They doubled down on that personnel, that offensive coordinator, young Ferentz. Can't remember his first name, but it's Kirk Ferentz's son at offensive coordinator. They doubled down on it. And that's just I don't know how you do that in today's game. I think Ferentz is just so established there. He has got such a cool seat, and he's not worried about, the optics of that or how much he needs to improve things. That's a terrible look for me. And surely the time is coming where that could cost him in the long run if he doesn't make some sweeping changes as far as how they're playing the game. You cannot just rely on your defense anymore. It will not get it done unless you have some threat offensively. And they haven't had it, or they've certainly had years where it's not been there, with 2022 maybe being the peak of that. So I think if there's a game that can be stolen, it's hosting Iowa. Maybe the wheels have fallen off for Iowa at that point. Maybe they've not. Maybe Nebraska's in a mess at that point. But I'm calling this a stillable game. Iowa should be favored, but I'm going to ride with Rule in one of these games where they just shouldn't do it. But they're like, hey, yeah, look, this is what we're going to be in the future. Hope you're watching us. Here's how we're going to do it going forward. Just get ready.
It's funny that you call this a steal because I'm just out on Iowa. I don't know that McNamara is going to be enough of a difference. I think your woes are in your staff, and you didn't correct that. As you said, they doubled down. So I don't like it. I don't think it's a steal. I think what's funny is I believe Nebraska won this game last year against Iowa.
That could be the case.
And now that you put it, I'm 99% sure. And now you put the game back in Lincoln. I'm riding with the red. So what's funny about this is you and I agreed on our predictions perfectly.
Every one of them. Every single one.
Minnesota loss, Colorado loss, NIU and LA Tech wins, Michigan loss, Illinois loss, Northwestern win, Purdue win, Michigan State loss, Maryland loss, Wisconsin loss, Iowa win.
That's hilarious.
We're like the same person.
We are. A few miles apart, same person.
No kidding. But now, if Nebraska can channel its full potential, what's the ceiling? What's the record look like for the ceiling?
The ceiling to me, and this is where a little bit more patience has to be asked for, has to be granted by the fans there, just a little bit more loyalty, because again, I think you've got a guy that can really do some things with time, with talent coming into town. But I still think the ceiling is 7-5, 8-4 if you figure it all out. Of course, that's not the record prediction that you and I just discussed, because I'm trying to see that more through the realistic goggles than, hey, what's the best case scenario here? What's the ceiling? And again, if I'm looking at the ceiling, I think 8 would be the ultimate ceiling. And that's, just everything falling into place. And that just doesn't happen a lot for first-year coaches. I'm sorry, first year at the location.
Yeah. I know what you meant. I've got it one step up. I've got it at 9-3 for their ceiling.
All right.
And it revolves around this Colorado game.
Yeah.
Things are firing all cylinders. They bust the chops of the Buffaloes, and that sends them on a trajectory where they're able to steal something like an Illinois. They're able to win their winnable games against your Michigan States, against your Wisconsins, your Iowas, and maybe even where am I looking at here? When your toss-up games. So there's a couple that I don't think change. Obviously, I don't think your Michigan changes. I don't think that your Minnesota changes. And I'm not really even sure that your Wisconsin changes.
Yeah.
But 9-3, I think, is the ceiling. But if the bottom falls out and things don't go well, like at all, right?
Yeah.
I think you're staring at 4-8.
Yeah. I have my floor here is 3-9, because I figured with me looking at 8, maybe 9 wins, because I toyed with it for a little while before I set it on 7-5, 8-4. I think there's a chance I'm just looking too optimistic that Rule maybe Rule doesn't have another rebuild in him. Maybe this is where the buck stops.
Yeah.
And I think 3 is your floor. I think 4-8 is more likely than 3-9. But man, if you could find a way just to get to 500, what a dub that would be for a first year coach in Rule at
Yeah.
Nebraska.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up in the final minutes of the show here. Let's talk best case, worst case scenarios. Now, we just gave our ceiling and floor, so we don't mean schedule when we say this. When we say best case scenario, what were the things that went right for Nebraska? What were the things that they were able to figure out that were that allowed them to produce, that allowed them to win games, that allowed them to reach their ceiling? The worst case scenario, what are the things that impacted the floor, right?
Yeah.
I'd love for you to set us off here and just hear what you got. So if best case scenario, what is that? What's the reason?
Yeah, I've got 4 bullets for a best case and 4 for a worst case. So
dang, okay.
For best case, number 1 priority for me, because I think this is how, you got to build level by level, but I think it really starts at quarterback. And I think they need Sims or Chubba Purdy to take this job from Casey Thompson, put him in the rearview mirror, run away with it, and just be that guy. Give them hope. Give your team hope through your position. Let it run through you. And again, I think that's Chubba or Sims. I don't think that's Casey Thompson. I don't think it's going to work out for him at this level, unfortunately. And he's been a college quarterback for a long time, so I think he's had his chance. Obviously, Nebraska is devoid of talent in some areas, but I think one of those guys need to take it and absolutely run with it.
All right, number 1, Sims or Purdy win the job. Cool.
Settle the competition early.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 2 for me is Anthony Grant still there at the running back position. He showed some flashes here and there. I'm even thinking back to the Northwestern game last year. So can you rely on him when you need a first down? You got 3rd and 4 to 6. You need a first down to keep the ball, keep your defense off the field. Can you rely on your running game? Can you rely on Grant to do that? And developing your top receiving target, whether it is Eric Gilbert, whether it is the transfer receiver that you mentioned, who's going to be the target for those quarterbacks to throw to? Just locate your number 1 receiver or your target for him to throw to, and then for Grant or one of those other guys just to be Mr. Reliable for you.
Okay. All right.
3 is, man, this one's tough because this is a big ask. Maybe even as big of an ask as it is quarterback position, but can that defense change to where that Northwestern game last year just stays rent-free in my mind, and I'm not even a Nebraska fan, but can they be in position? Because they're probably not going to have the speed to really win you ball games or really carry you in games. So can you win the trenches? Can you be in position? Your linebackers, your corners, your safeties, preventing balls from just being thrown over your head. Can your defense, salvage enough to let your offense have time, work it out as the game goes? What can you prove on defense? Because Lord knows that's been a struggle. Unfortunately, the biggest struggle may be speed there.
Can I summarize that by saying defense is serviceable?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Middle of the road defense at worst.
Okay. 4,
this is the only record-related one that I have, but can you get to 500? I think if you can get to 500, that's best case long-term for your program. That's a huge sign of hope and buy-in for the long term. So I said 500, bowl eligibility. Just give me something to make me believe that you're going to have another rebuild left up your sleeve.
Okay, fair enough. So I just have 1 for each.
Okay.
You went in depth on me. So Rule has got this narrative out on him that he's productive in the trenches. It seems to be how he won his games at Baylor, how he won his games at Temple. And I think if they are competitive in the trenches, that is enough for them to reach that 8-4, that 9-3. If you're getting to the quarterback consistently, that means your defense is winning you some games. You have so many recent memories of losing 1-score games.
Yeah.
And winning games in the trenches, or being serviceable, being productive in the trenches is enough to flip that loss to a win in 1-score games. Derek Barnett says hello, if you know what I'm saying. Worst case scenario, I'll go ahead and spit mine and then let you go and then close us out. He hired Satterfield as his offensive coordinator. I think the worst case scenario is you just have some offensive woes.
Yeah.
Where you don't know what your quarterback is. you're not, or if you have him, you're not getting the production. I went and pulled some numbers on Thompson and on Jeff Sims, and they're just not good.
Yeah.
The stats are not good on either one. So last year, Casey Thompson, who just for fun of it, sits at 6 foot, 195. He rushed last year 56 attempts, negative 21 yards. Now, you and I know that counts in, right, sacks and stuff like that. But that number is going to have to turn up on its head. You have got to fix that. This is what I mean, best case scenario, fixing the trenches, being serviceable, being competitive in the trenches. He was 63% on his passes, throwing for 2,400 yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 picks. Not good. Not good at all. Jeff Sims is worse. Jeff Sims only played 7 games last year, but he stands at 6'4", 220 pounds. He was 58% on his passes, only throwing for 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks.
Ugh.
So I think your worst case scenario is you just have offensive woes. Just your fans in the stands are just going, oh my gosh, offensively, what's next? I mean, goodness. Grant is not getting off. He's not finding holes, or the holes are not there. It's just offensive woes. Basically, what we saw in South Carolina from week 1 till they played Tennessee.
Yeah, there you go. And just to quickly run through my worst case scenarios for this team is you've even said half of them, but quarterback carousel, say Thompson wins the job. He's a turnover machine. You know what I mean? Week 2 or 3 here, we've made our way through the early portion of the season. We're getting accustomed to what it's going to be for Rule, and just you take out Thompson when he makes some mistakes. You bring in Sims, and it's just more of the same. He can't get his legs going. Something to that effect. It's a carousel. Nobody wins the job. It's the man by default, or no one has separated. That's kind of been the issue that you see in the sport, not just at Nebraska. The second and third ones, just you kind of alluded to as well. You can't keep a quarterback upright. You can't make a single lane for Grant or for anyone to run through. And then conversely, you have zero push. You're not even threatening the opposing run game, or certainly their quarterback. They're just having all day to operate against you. And both trenches are just non-existent is worst case. And then lastly, this is going to be the one that you just have to recruit through and probably transfer portal your way through until you really put some product out there on the field. And my summarization of it was speed kills. You've got to flip the speed of that roster. Find a way, man. Just find a way to infuse speed into that roster, whether it's primarily on offense, at receiver, getting guys behind corners and across the middle and doing this and that, or if you're just getting beat over the top, or you're just, unable to take things away from the opposing team and things like that. You mentioned when you dropped the recruiting knowledge that you gave us for their last class. What was the number of, was it defensive backs that was pretty strong, or was it defensive linemen?
Defensive backs, 5 of them.
5 of them. Mm-hmm. They've got 27 defensive backs, and now that includes your safeties, but that's your corners, your slot guys, nickel, safeties. They've got 27 defensive backs on their roster. Online, of course, these things change during the offseason, so it's probably trimmed down by the time the season rolls around. 27 defensive backs on the roster. That's almost, that's pushing double some positions. What you've got, like 14 defensive linemen, you've got 18 linebackers. You got a good bit of offensive linemen to choose from. You should be able to find 5, 7, maybe 8 guys out of that 19 that can at least not be just a turnstile. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no kidding.
7 quarterbacks to compete it out. 11 running backs are listed. That's borderline Georgia Tech back in the day when Johnson was on his way out there.
Yeah.
And then you've got 12 tight ends listed and 20 receivers listed on your website right now. So listen, find the guys that can do whatever it is. Find yourself 5, 6 wins on that scheduled minimum. Show me that you're going to give me something.
Yeah.
That my dollar's still going somewhere.
Yeah, no kidding. I think Nebraska is going to look like the 2013 Tennessee Volunteers. That's
possible.
As in, there's just not a lot of talent in the cupboard, but they played with their hair on fire. We lost the close games, but we were competitive. Something we hadn't been. We typically rolled over. And I'm not comparing Scott Frost to Derek Dooley, but there just wasn't a lot of fight in Nebraska. Like it became part of the culture. So I think Matt Rule is a culture guy. He's going to get that flipped. And I look for Nebraska to play with a lot of character, a lot of integrity, a lot of fight, a lot of grit. Excited to watch them this coming year. And I do want to say, as we close this thing, predicting this for first year head coaches is a really tough task.
Yeah.
This is incredibly hard just because you don't know. You just don't know.
Rule could be one of the best, the ones that we have the most idea about when we, I'd love to look back at these when see how wrong and how right we are. And Rule could be one of the ones that we have the most sense of what we're going to get from as when you look at some of these others. So it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah. So y'all be looking out for some more Pandemonium Reigns episodes as we tackle guys like Hugh Freeze and Deion Sanders and Luke Fickell, names of the such. But one trivia question before we hop off here. You ready for this?
Oh yeah,
putting you on the spot, baby. When is the last time? And if you could tell me who it was, when's the last time Nebraska had a first round draft pick?
That's probably going to be in Dominican Sue.
That is a really close answer. That would be 2010, and that is incorrect. Okay.
I have no further guesses. I mean, I was so confident with that. You might as well just, I don't even know. Go ahead.
Well, I'll give you credit. So I started looking because I wanted to ask you this question. It's a lot of second round guys. I think they had two of them last year. Like
wow.
Taylor Britt and I don't even know the other guy's names.
Yeah.
2011, Prince Amukamara.
Oh, Prince Amukamara. I don't even know this sport, man. You need a co-host because you ain't got one of me.
I hear you, man. You're beautiful. It ain't nobody but you. Not even my lady. Okay. She don't have hair like you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Hey, we love you guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with us and letting us tickle your ears wherever you're at. Thanks for listening to Pandemonium Reigns. Again, hit the like button, hit subscribe button. Follow us on Instagram, dtucker06. Follow Mike on Instagram, Michael, Mikelb. Walker stands for Blake.
Balake.
Make sure you follow us on the Twitter. Our Twitter platform is growing. Pandemo Reigns. I don't know what your username is.
It's okay. I might know mine. I don't even know. Malker, Malker_. That's a good guess.
There it
Check
is.
out our podcast Twitter. You'll find me in there.
There you go. Michael is roughing the feathers of Twitter world. So y'all make sure y'all give that a follow. We love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll be back hopefully later this week with part 2 of this series, either looking at Auburn or Colorado or Wisconsin. Don't know yet. But make sure you're tuned in. We love you guys. God bless. Go Vols.
GBO.